this is, I think, your first ever episode of WCW Nitro.
Yes, it is. And what a funny show that was.
Oh,
it was so bizarre. So I'm watching it, and it's just your usual kind of like serial
weekly episodic wrestling show.
Kind of wrestling show. And I'm like, okay. And then the man comes on and he says, this is the only building big enough that could hold Nitro. And I sort of spot a big escalator in the background. And I'm like, I mean, it is a big building, but that's a shopping centre. They're in a shopping centre, Mark. What's this about?
They're in the atrium of the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota.
What the fuck?
I mean, we might look at it and go, that's a weird place to have a show.
It's fucking mental, Mark. Let's mad.
Let's listen to Kevin Sullivan, who was part of the roster at the time. Malls were hot at the time. It was the biggest mall in America, and it made it look like we were coming from the largest venue other than an arena. That's key to it, other than an arena. WCW, even though it's got Hulk Hogan, it's still having big problems selling out non-pay-per-view shows. They've got a really poor house show sort of thing. So they're basically gone, do you know what? We've got this new show. We don't want an arena that looks tired. We want to reinvent the wheel. Where better than to have a big show in the atrium and escalator lift area of a massive mall?
Well, I guess there are a lot of people. It's very accessible. There's probably enough car parkage there and stuff. So I kind of understand it. But you don't need to see a fucking Dick's Sporting Goods store at the
Yeah, I love the fact they didn't say to the shops, could we just for this hour turn off all the neons? And the shop's going, is this going out on TV? Yeah, absolutely not. No, they're staying on. They're staying on. What you've got there, Pete, which is great, is Eric Bischoff has succeeded in what he set out to do, because that response that you got, what is a wrestling show doing in a mall, is exactly the sort of response that Eric Bischoff wanted to get when people sat and watched WCW Nitro.
Right.
The quick story behind it, WCW is chugging along. They've got Hulk Hogan. That's a huge, big signing for them. Yeah. But they're still not anywhere near as big as WWF. So Eric Bischoff, who is basically in charge of the company at this point, he has a meeting with the Turner Broadcasting chairman, Ted Turner. And the meeting is about him licensing WCW shows to a Chinese broadcasting company that is owned by Ted Turner's big rival, Rupert Murdoch. They have this boring internal meeting, and what it does is it changes wrestling forever. Because halfway through, Ted Turner stops Eric Bischoff talking about this Chinese thing. And he says, Eric, what do we need to do to become competitive with Vince? And that question kicks off the biggest explosion of wrestling's popularity and success in its history. With no real answer and just thinking on his feet, Eric Bischoff just said, I'm going to go for the moon. And he said, do you know what? I need a primetime television slot. And Ted Turner immediately turned to the president of TNT, who was the boss of the channel that WCW went out on at the time. And he said, I want you to give WCW an hour of live network television every Monday night. That would put it head to head with the WWF's flagship show, Monday Night Raw. Bischoff said going head to head with WWE would mean one of two things. We'd either rise to the occasion and be successful, or our failures and weaknesses would be obvious and we would never ever get a chance again. So this is it, do or die. What they do was Turner Broadcasting brought in all of their big research teams and market researchers, and they did big questionnaires about what people liked in wrestling. And Eric Bischoff noticed again and again the answer, I like it when it's unpredictable and spontaneous, that kept on popping up. He said people like surprises, especially in wrestling. So he sees the word unpredictable, he sees the word spontaneous. Yeah. That's what he does. Pete, you weren't expecting to see the first episode of WCW Nitro take place in a massive mall.
I wasn't.
Well, you did.
So have it, goddammit. I didn't expect to see Jushin Thunder Liger doing his thing in a ring that was just where you'd be looking for the toilets in a big mall. I just it's near a water fountain.
You wouldn't have expected that WCW would once again hold a show that they didn't have to sell tickets for and just gave away free. Bang! Spontaneous, unpredictable.
I'm sure the accountants for WCW felt the same as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Why are we making any money out of any of these shows? Why are we just throwing money into a big pool of
boom, you thought we were going to make profit this week. Bam! How'd you like that? I bet you love it. This is the first episode of WCW Nitro. Nobody ever talks about this, but the name is very clearly to get you confused with Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got Nitro. I mean, why would it be called WCW Nitro?
I didn't really sort of clock that, but you're probably right.
Nobody mentions that. And I don't understand why, because it's not like you go Nitro, of course, that's the natural name you come up with for a wrestling show. It's not. It's entirely to do it. So you might go, are you watching WCW Nitro? And people would go, is that the one that I am aware of?
Yeah, it's like I watched Hulk Hogan on
you watched Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, is he the... Yes, he is.
Well, we were talking about earlier the amazing hubris of the Japanese developer of, was it Wrestle War? And they basically just had a big drawing of Hulk Hogan. This all got changed for the European and US releases.
It did, yeah.
But the Japanese version has a big picture of one of the Legion of Doom, and you've got a big picture of Hulk Hogan, clearly Hulk Hogan. It even says on his bandana, Titan Hogan, Python Power. It's an astonishing bit of passing off, and Bischoff is bang up for that kind of caper as well.
Absolutely. Nitro is the Wrestle War Hulk Hogan of mainstream US wrestling television shows. What's really interesting about this is historically you'd kind of go, oh, right, so what actually was Raw like this week when it started? And oddly, it was the last time there was no episode of Raw. It had been taken off, as it frequently was in the 90s, because the Westminster Dog Show would take priority. And when the Westminster Dog Show rolled around, Raw would just be cancelled. The Westminster Dog Show is America's version of Crufts, and they'd go, no Raw this week. I did watch the previous Raw from the 21st of August, 1995, and having watched this Nitro, which for all its madness is, I mean, it is very, very pacey and very, very full on. Some would say too full on, too pacey. But the Raw that had taken place the week before gives you a better indication of what the wrestling landscape was like. It was absolutely awful, Pete. It was completely dead. The opening credit still has saxophone in it, like it's Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
The opening match they had was King Mabel and Mo taking on the jobbers Joe Handcock and Roy Raymond. There was a 1-2-3 Kid Brooklyn Brawler match, and then they had an Undertaker versus Tatanka match to set up SummerSlam. American wrestling TV at this time was just, you got a load of old crap. They were building only to the pay-per-views. And suddenly Nitro comes along, and they're kicking off a show with Jushin Liger versus Brian Pillman. Yeah. This is a big change from the previous week, where the best you could hope for was Undertaker Tatanka.
Yeah.
Thrilling. So they open up with the credits. Only a few wrestlers, 4, I think, featured in those credits. They were Hogan, Sting, Savage, and Vader. Vader was supposed to be on the following week's Nitro, but he'd already been fired from WCW, having had a big locker room fight with Paul Orndorff, and they basically felt that Vader was a bit difficult, so they decided to push him out the door.
I just thought he'd parked his car in the wrong part of the car park.
Vader, on historical level, would never ever perform on Nitro, which seems astonishing. You'd absolutely 100%.
Interesting.
Also, Pete, you'll notice in the credits, there is fire.
There is fire, yeah.
That is wrestling's way of telling you that things are going to be bloody exciting.
There is. There's like pictures of like just buildings around with projections of the wrestlers and fire in the foreground.
Yeah.
And that means something's happening.
It's like the Warriors, isn't it? Or Escape from New York. Yeah. This ain't your daddy's wrestling. This is on fire. Fire's cool, kids, isn't it? You love fire. We should actually think about doing a podcast where we just try and set fires places. I mean, if nothing else, it would get coverage. The Mall of America, it does have a little bit of wrestling history as well. It was a mall that was built in the early 90s, so by the time they have this Nitro there, it is still pretty brand new. It was built on the site of a stadium that was called the Metropolitan Stadium, and that had a lot of wrestling take place there over the years. As late as August 1990, the WWF had a house show there where the main event was the Texas Tornado and the Ultimate Warrior against Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. So oddly, this mall is sort of, you know how like haunted houses are built on cursed Native American burial grounds? Yeah. This mall is actually built on a sort of former wrestling hotspot. Something they never mention and that no one would care about other than me. Make that clear.
Well, halfway through, Mean Gene goes on about talking about buying some land. He's such a weird thing to say. More
and more, I watch bits of Mean Gene and he says stuff that I go, is this basically his mind short-circuiting? Because a lot of it, you hear it once when it goes out live, or you see it on a grainy video, you're not paying attention to Mean Gene. But more and more, the things he says, they're like fucking, like he's trying to get signal to someone. He's got, like he's going, I've got 15 clues to this treasure that I need to get out there to the players. He makes a really odd thing where he just comes out and he's about to interview Hulk Hogan, and he just says, "To think, I could have bought 10 acres of land here for 17 grand in 1953. Of course, I was only 8 years old at the time. Talking of winners," he says.
Cool.
TNT, to think, I could have bought 10 acres of land here for 17 grand in 1953. Of course, I was only 8 years old at the time, so who knows? By the way, speaking of winners,
what are all the numbers? Is it a combination? So you could have bought 15 for 17 grand in 53 and you were only 8. That seems to me a series of numbers that would work as the combination for a safe. We're hunting Mean Gene's gold.
Yes. It's all in plain sight. Fantastic.
The search for Mean Gene's gold. We have to find another story that makes no sense that he tells, where there are sort of things where he's talking about road names. That's the thing. Begin narrowing it down.
I mean, if you want to have an idea about what this whole show looked like, it looked like someone having a big scrap in the middle of the Trocadero.
It did, yeah. Did you used to go to, was it Sega World in the Trocadero?
Yeah, I went a couple of times, but by the time I'd got to London, it was mainly absolutely creepy-looking bald men eyeing up young Chinese teenagers because Chinatown's just around the corner on the DDR machines. It was all a bit, this is wrong. But I heard good things about, was it Space War or something? There's some kind of interactive escape room.
That rings a bell.
Room.
The Trocadero did spend a long time in a slow spiralling death, didn't it? Where, there were lots of weird things that would move in there. There would be theme restaurants that'd be very popular for about 2 months. And then they'd just disappear, like a Coyote Ugly restaurant experience. I seem to remember. I did my first ever one on one of those dancing games there when, that was brand new and you dance with your girlfriend from school on one of those things. And it was also coincided with the first time I ever saw a man masturbating in public, who was just a horrible, wizened old walnut of a man hanging around the Trocadero. Oh, magic. That's a horrific image to end on.